The Story of Bluebeard by Charles Perrault. There was a man who owned beautiful town and country homes, gold and silver plate, embroidered furniture, and coaches that were gold-plated all over. However, this man also had a blue beard, which made him look so hideous and dreadful that every woman and girl fled from him. One of his neighbors was a lady of quality, who had two really stunning daughters. She was given the option of choosing which of the two she would give him when he proposed to marry one of them. Because neither of them could decide whether or not to marry a man with a blue beard, they sent him from one to the other. The fact that he had previously had multiple wives, and no one knew what had happened to them, only served to heighten their dislike of him. In an effort to get to know them, Bluebeard invited them, along with their mother, 3 or 4 of their closest friends, and other young people from the neighborhood, to one of his country estates, where they spent the entire week. Nobody went to bed. The entire night was spent in cheerful games and gambles. Nothing except excursions, hunting and fishing, parties, balls, entertainments, and collations were considered. In summary, everything went off so smoothly that the youngest daughter started to learn that the master of the house was a very deserving man, and that his beard was not as blue as it formerly was. The marriage happened right away after they got back to town. At the end of a month, Bluebeard informed his wife that he was required to travel for at least 6 weeks in order to address a significant matter. He pleaded with her to amuse herself as much as possible during his absence. He also instructed her to invite her closest friends, take them into the country if she so desired, and maintain an excellent table wherever she went. He handed her these keys, saying, "These open the caskets that contain my jewels, and this is the passkey for all the apartments. These are the keys to my 2 large storerooms, the chests that contain the gold and silver plate that is only used on special occasions, the strong boxes where I keep my money, and the keys to the 2 great storerooms. This tiny key belongs in the closet on the ground floor, toward the end of the lengthy gallery. Open anything and go wherever, with the exception of that tiny closet, which I expressly ban you from entering. If you dare to open the door, there is nothing you may not have to fear from my wrath." She gave him her word that she would follow all of his instructions, and after they had been hugged, he mounted his horse and began traveling. The young bride's neighbors and friends did not wait for her invitation because they were so eager to view all the things within the mansion. They had not dared to enter it when the husband was at home since they were so afraid of his blue beard. Observe them quickly moving through all the rooms, wardrobes, and closets, each unit outstripping the others in beauty and wealth. After that, they went up to the storerooms, where they were overwhelmed by the quantity and elegance of the tapestries, beds, sofas, cabinets, stands, tables, and mirrors that allowed them to see themselves from head to foot, and had frames made of glass, silver, and gilt metal that were unlike anything they had ever seen before. They never stopped enlarging on and envying their friend's good fortune, who in the meantime was not the least bit amused by the sight of all these things due to her impatience to open the closet on the ground floor. She hurried down a back staircase in such haste that 2 or 3 times she narrowly avoided breaking her neck out of sheer curiosity rather than considering how rude it was to leave her company. As she approached the closet door, she took a moment to reflect about her husband's restriction and the potential consequences of her disobedience, but the temptation was too great for her to resist. So, she grabbed the tiny key and shakily flung open the closet door. The windows were blocked at first, so she was unable to see anything. However, after a short while, she started to notice that the floor was completely coated in clotted blood, which was reflecting the dead bodies of several females hanging against the walls. These were all Bluebeard's wives, and they had all been murdered one by one. She was so terrified that she was ready to pass out, and the closet key she had just taken out of the lock slipped from her grasp. After briefly regaining her composure, she picked up the key, locked the door once more, and went up to her room to try to calm herself down. However, she was so anxious that she was unable to do so. She tried wiping the blood off the closet key 2 or 3 times after noticing it was stained with blood. She washed it in vain and even scraped it with sand and freestone, but the blood remained. This was because the key was charmed and couldn't be fully cleaned. When the blood was washed off one side, it returned on the other. When Bluebeard came home that evening, he claimed to have gotten letters on the road telling him that the business he was traveling for had been resolved in his favor. His wife made every effort to convince him that she was happy about his quick homecoming. The following morning, when he asked for his keys once more, she gave them to him, but her hand shook so violently that he knew immediately what had happened. He questioned, "How come the key to the closet isn't with the others?" After repeated explanations, she was forced to produce the key. "I must have left it," she said, "upstairs on my table." "Fail not," ordered Bluebeard, "to give it me immediately." After seeing it, Bluebeard stated to his wife, "Why is this key covered in blood?" The poor lady, who appeared deathly pale, replied, "I don't know." Bluebeard responded, "You don't know? Well, lady, you shall enter the closet and go take your place among the ladies you saw there. I know you well enough to know that you must enter the closet." She threw herself at her husband's feet while sobbing and pleading for his forgiveness, displaying all the traits of a sincere repentant person for having disobeyed him. Although Bluebeard's wife's beauty and ailment could have made a rock melt, his heart was as solid as a rock. He commanded, "Madam, you must die now." "Give me a little time to say my prayers, if I must die," she retorted, her tears flooding at him. Bluebeard replied, "I give you half a quarter of an hour, but not a minute more." She immediately phoned her sister, Sister Anne, for that is what she was called, and asked her to check the top of the tower to see whether her brothers were coming. "They have promised me that they would come to see me today," she said. "If you see them, sign to them to make haste." Sister Anne ascended to the top of the tower, and the poor frightened creature would periodically call out to her, "Anne, Sister Anne, dost thou not see anything coming?" Sister Anne would reply, "I see nothing but the sun making dust, and the grass growing green." While Bluebeard, holding a massive cutlass in his hand, would yell with all his might at his wife, "Come down quickly, or I will come up there." His wife replied, "1 minute more, please," and then he instantly said, "Anne, Sister Anne, dost thou not see anything coming?" Sister Anne answered, "I see nothing but the sun producing dust, and the grass turning green." Bluebeard bellowed, "Come down immediately, or I will come up there," and his wife replied, "I come." He then yelled, "Anne, Sister Anne, dost thou not see anything coming?" "I see," responded Sister Anne, "a large cloud of dust going this way. Is it my brothers?" "Alas, no, sister, I see a flock of sheep." "Will you not descend?" demanded Bluebeard. Then she exclaimed, "Anne, Sister Anne, dost thou not see anything coming?" "I see," she responded, "2 horses coming this way, but they are still at a vast distance." His wife then said, "1 minute more." A second later, she cried, "Praise be to God! They are my brothers. I am making all the signs I can to hasten them." Bluebeard roared so fiercely the whole house rocked again. The poor wife sank to the ground and threw herself at his feet, her eyes flowing and her hair in a mess. "It is useless," Bluebeard declared. He then grabbed her by the hair and raised his cutlass, preparing to lop off her head, saying, "You must die." The poor woman turned to face him and begged him for just a few moments to gather himself in her dying eyes. He then lifted his arm and commanded, "No, no, recommend thyself wholeheartedly to heaven," before saying, "No, no." At this point, there was such a loud knocking at the gate that Bluebeard had to halt. As soon as it was opened, 2 riders were spotted riding inside and running directly at Bluebeard while drawing their swords. He recognized them as his wife's brothers, one a dragoon and the other a musketeer, and immediately ran away in the hope of escaping. However, they pursued him so closely that they caught up to him before he could reach the step of his door, and after slicing his body in half with their swords, they left him for dead. When it was discovered that Bluebeard had no heirs, his widow remained in possession of all of his property. She used some of it to marry her sister and to a young man who had long loved her, another portion to purchase captain's commissions for her 2 brothers, and with the remainder, she married herself to a very worthy man, who helped her forget the miserable time she had endured.